Today, the GOP senators block the January 6th commission, and also MSNBC, in a very, very heroic act of journalism, talks about Biden absolutely going to town on ice cream. Oh my gosh, we have got the headlines of the day coming up this Friday, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Friday. I am Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by my friends Eric July, BlazeTV contributor, back here, double dose of Eric July, Thursday and
back
Friday.
to back.
Yes. And also joined by my friend, political commentator John Doyle. I called you my friend. So.
I know, we're moving up. I like it.
By the way, Eric, I have to tell you, I thought sometimes I'm just like, random, in case you guys haven't noticed, which I know you have. And yesterday I'll be like, back in the house, or like back in the flesh. And yesterday apparently I said, back in the house, Eric July. And someone was like, oh, she only said that because he's black.
That's interesting.
Like,
It's a common theme. I noticed you introduced me as your friend, but him as a BlazeTV. It's the subtlety.
Right. It's just like, you guys will find anything to criticize about. My goodness gracious. So apparently I'm racist for saying that. I don't know, because reasons. So back to the headlines of the day. So the GOP senators, of course, there was a bipartisan push to launch an independent and nonpartisan investigation into what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. And that suffered a fatal blow today after nearly all Senate Republicans banded together in opposition. This was a 54-35 outcome on voting to start this independent commission. And of course, that falls 6 votes shy of the 60 votes needed to circumvent a procedural filibuster. By the way, this was an 11th hour. This included an 11th hour bid by Senator Susan Collins of Maine to save the measure by introducing changes intended to address her party's principal objections. But nonetheless, it did fail. So now I don't see how they do this, at least through Congress. I don't know, and maybe either of you know, I don't know what would be stopping Joe Biden from just like
launching his own investigation.
Right,
yeah.
just appointing, that was the word that was escaping me, from just appointing someone to just investigate just because he's president of the United States and he has no problem pushing through all of these executive, orders. So why not just push for an investigation? I don't know, maybe because it's just kind of like all optics and they just want the illusion that this was just a big deal that they need to spend years and millions of your taxpayer dollars to get to the bottom of, kind of like collusion in Russia. And then all of a sudden 2 years later, after they've hyped it up in the news for 2 years, all of a sudden, didn't find anything. Whoops.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching the Democrats just cling on to the events of just January 6th. Not just to still be talking about it, but among the simple fact that everything that they've basically said about this, or the initial reports, let's say if you want to call it initial reporting, had turned out to be false. Definitely when it comes to the more violent acts, guy beaten the head with a fire extinguisher, didn't happen. No evidence of blunt force trauma or anything. It just seemed like a bunch of grandmas and dude bros kicking their feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk, which is much akin to what it was.
And by the way, I mean, there was one person who died, and that person
was shot by the police.
Right.
That was unarmed, by the way.
Right. So it
person.
wasn't like one of the the people who were up in the cathedral.
Absolutely up in the cathedral. But no, they're still clinging to the idea of that insurrection, whatever buzz terms that they want to use to make it way more dramatic than what it actually was. And they seem to have nothing else. They're bored to death. Not bored spending your money, but they're bored to death and they need something else to cling on. They really want that event to be the big boogeyman. And as long as they can kick that can down the road, they're absolutely going to. We've seen them do that with other subject matters as well. So the fact that, though, most of the initial claims, the violent claims, is what they clung on to as to why that was so bad. President Trump said this, he incited this, and this led to the deaths of XX.
He was impeached for a second time.
Exactly.
I think we forget that.
And again, what people seem to forget, because it didn't go, obviously they're not going to cover the correction as much as they covered the initial false claims, let's call them what they were, but they really want that event to be something that it was not. Even when they still talk about it, the way they still talk about it, you think that it was just a bunch of armed people that ran down there just gunning down Congress folk, but that absolutely wasn't the case. So they're going to keep kicking that can down the road, not just because they don't have anything else. They need that event to be disastrous, basically, so they can paint their opposition as the big bad people who want to overthrow the government. And again, it gives them way too much credit as far as I'm concerned.
That's the scary thing, too, because even if they don't have the support of this narrative directly by the Biden administration in the state, it's still going to be upheld by the media apparatuses, which effectively act as like state-adjacent propaganda. And it's still going to be written about in history textbooks as the biggest threat to our democracy since 9/11. Not that we're a democracy, but it's like it's never going to go away.
For sure.
And that's why I think the Republicans were actually responsible, not right necessarily, but responsible to shoot this down, because it probably should have existed, because there are a lot of questions, like you mentioned, that surround that event, that if we had a competent party, that we could bring that to the national spotlight and have those questions answered. But the Republicans almost know that they're not capable of doing that, so it was better for them strategically to just shut it down.
Yeah, because weren't there reports that like Nancy Pelosi called off the National Guard originally showing up?
Oh yeah, and they were letting people in. They said that you can stay in here as long as you don't get destructive.
There were videos of that.
There's
videos of that. So yeah, it would very much be interesting. I also, John, if you could try maybe to explain this to me, because I fail to understand how you have a side who they are claiming, the alt-right, the right-wingers, the extreme
I reject your framing.
Right.
Hey, John, explain the alt-right to me.
No. But you have the left who's constantly calling this an insurrection. They were trying. Yes, they were trying. It was a coup. They were trying to overthrow Congress. Why is it that you have a side who really, I don't want to be stereotypical, but like we are the ones with all the guns. If we were planning an insurrection and a coup, and we were going to overthrow the federal government, why then would they have all showed up unarmed? Could you explain that to me, please?
Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of the liberal types don't like guns. They want to take guns away. But what's scary about leftists, and I tried to say this on Elijah's show this week, but then I guess the producer cut it out because it was too controversial. So we'll try it here.
We'll try it here.
News and Why It Matters exclusive. Go.
This isn't controversial. This is what they openly say. The reason leftists actually like guns is because they want it for the revolution. So if you ask like Eric or myself, why do you like guns? Self-defense, clay shooting, whatever. You ask the leftists why they like guns, it's because they want to lead a revolution, which means they want to like kill people. And so like the liberal types who are consolidated in the media right now might, kind of be like, oh, we want to take your guns and you guys are trying to do an armed insurrection. But like the leftists are openly calling for that against right-wing people, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, Eric?
No, that's a great point, actually. I mean, they're only anti-gun to a certain extent. Definitely if they could control the people who have the biggest, baddest, and the best guns, and they can turn them on to their opposition. We've seen certainly a lot of that going on. I mean, hell, you don't have to go as far as last year. You can just look at the TV right now, and there's probably someone lecturing someone about Texas getting permitless carry, and it's the worst thing in the world, while then crying about whatever else is going on with the police, or as we talked about yesterday, guys getting their cars jacked. Atlanta council folks getting their cars back to voting to defund the police. Yeah, it's almost like those antithetical concepts. But yeah, like again, it's that big bad wolf that they need to exist, and that's how I've been framing it for the last year when we discussed this topic of the dramatization of certain events. And we can see, like for example, with the COVID thing, when it came to like the George Floyd protests and everything, like they get to be as rowdy as people can actually die. We know what happened with not just a Chaz thing, but even with some of these riots and whatever, they want you to pretend like that's not even a thing, though that happened more places. Obviously, it wasn't just something that was centered in one place. That happened all across the nation, and some of that did result in obviously billions of dollars of property damage, but also death, believe it or not, some of which have been caught on tape, some of which we talked about here. And for whatever reason, we're led to believe, or they like to lead us to believe, that what happened, which you mentioned, the side that would have all the guns, if they were actually legitimately going to take it to the Congress folks who send your people off to war, and they were ducking under desk and all of that sort of stuff, I would say there wouldn't be anything that you could do about it, but there would have certainly been more conflict. But again, on one of those narratives, they found there was no finding any of any armed guns or anything when they were, of course, initially investigating what happened. So most of what we know about that event was a complete lie, and there are also events that have happened over the last year that have been far more violent and far more widespread. But we're supposed to believe that whatever happened then, a bunch of unarmed grandmas waving little flags, walking in a single file order between red velvet rope, that is the biggest threat to whatever it is that we, and like I said, if they actually were a threat to the federal government, you're giving them far too much credit, because then I'd have to be forced to be on their side.
Well, I mean, it was a reason that AOC needed therapy. Those grandmas with their flags and their cameras.
Unbelievable.
She does need therapy over that. All right, let's get to more news of the day, which is that inflation rates are soaring at their fastest pace in decades, according to new numbers just released. Let's see. The personal consumption expenditure inflation measure climbed 3.6% in April from the prior year. This is the strongest reading in 13 years and more than the 3.5% gain that economists in a Bloomberg survey had expected. By the way, prices rose 0.7% compared with the prior month, the biggest increase in 2 decades. So people look at this, oh, it's 0.7%. No, it's the biggest increase in 2 decades. By the way, this is at the same time that we talked about yesterday, the new $6 trillion budget proposal of Joe Biden's. We've got a couple of, I call them high points. Really, they're low points because it all sucks. But let's see. Biden has lowered his pitch for an infrastructure bill from $2.3 trillion to $1.7 trillion. But don't worry, Republican senators are counter-proposing just less than $1 trillion. So, I mean, you know, if there's a party to curb the spending, it's definitely Republicans, guys. Great job. Let's see. Biden has the $1.8 trillion families plan, and if adopted, the budget would put the annual deficit at an average of $1.3 trillion per year for the next decade. And then we would just have an $8.2 trillion budget by 2031. He includes $400 billion for home and community health care, $174 billion for electric vehicle subsidies, $115 billion for roads and bridges, $111 billion for water systems, $100 billion for school construction. It goes on and on. $511 billion for education, including universal preschool for 3 to 4 year olds, because that's definitely what you want. Is your 3 and 4 year old getting indoctrinated by these public school in the government? $225 billion for childcare. Sorry about that edit. Including a subsidy that caps expenses at 7% of income. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on with all of this BS that they have included in this. Obviously, there is a large chunk of it that is social spending. But April inflation surging to the highest level in decades. Just the $6 trillion budget with no party in sight who is prepared to rein in any sort of spending. Is my head the only one that's about to explode?
Well, mine's long have exploded. I've been talking about this on this network for years, even before becoming a regular here at the round table. This was something I was telling the Americans that they need to pay attention to. I know economics seems like this boring subject matter where it's all
their eyes just sort of glaze over.
Yeah, and definitely when you hear terms like, you know, that you become numb to that, like trillions of dollars, you become numb to what that actually means. Or rather, when they're, in addition to all the egregious spending, that they're printing money that's coming from future generations, what that does to your money right now. I was literally making this point yesterday about, you might not feel it immediately, but that's what that means, guys, is that you may have been making X amount of dollars, but X amount of dollars doesn't go as far as it once went. So you couple this with the fact that they're printing it out there, spending money recklessly, and of course the Republicans are going to do absolutely nothing about it because they're certainly on the jig. I don't see why folks get so bent out of shape, because I say this has to be ended, like as in that the federal government, I would say, arguably needs to be rid of and abolished. But if we can't even concede that the point that there's something fundamentally wrong with them spending trillions of dollars now in a deficit, which you don't know, for those of you who don't know what that means, it's different from debt. That's them literally spending. Could you imagine if a business operated like that, where they say, all right, we have this money that's not there, we're going to spend it anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to spend it anyway.
How about just an average American household?
Yeah, it's exactly. I don't got the money. It doesn't matter. Spend it anyway. And then just pile up massive amounts of debt. And unfortunately, the American people, especially those salary workers, are the ones that are going to feel it the most.
Yeah. That's what's so funny about when economics started to be classified as like a social science in the 20th century, is it opens it up to criticism. Like psychology, we can debate. Anthropology, we can debate what's effective. We know what works with economics.
Yes,
it's like basically math.
law. Yeah,
like
exactly.
we know what works. And then once it's introduced into this sort of like liberal ideology of like, oh, just throw money at something and see if it grows. And then, literally. And now we're trillions of dollars in debt, like you mentioned, with the deficit. And I just love that it was like right in time for tax season. I love paying taxes to the government and then also having the money left over be devalued.
Yeah,
man,
it's great. Just a
fantastic
double,
feeling, right?
Double whammy right there. All right, we've got more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Bonner Wine, because it's Friday and it is time for happy hour. All right, so if those of you, you're like me and you love wine, let me tell you how to make your wine 10 times healthier. They have this wine down in Argentina. They make this really dark red wine from Malbec grapes. They are grown at very high altitudes. And when I say high altitudes, I mean like 9,000 feet. All right, they have lab tested the wines and found that they contain up to 10 times the levels of longevity and heart health nutrient. It's called resveratrol. This thing pops up again and again in studies on longevity, heart health, brain health. By the way, if those of you, I'm like a big, I don't eat a lot of sugar. This wine has 90% less sugar, fewer chemicals, and fewer additives. So you can get the wine, okay, drink it with your steak, your medium rare steak, whatever you want to drink it with, and then you can say, I'm doing it for my health. Okay, that's what I do. Do what I do. All right. Today, the people at cowgirlwine2021.com are giving you 50% off of their best Malbecs. You're also going to get 50% off of shipping. This makes a great gift, by the way, for those of you who have dads who are really, really big wine drinkers. They will love it. I am telling you, you got to go to cowgirlwine2021.com. The shipment will leave fast. So go to cowgirlwine2021.com. As we here at BlazeTV are bringing you the stories that matter, like the inflation over in April and the $6 trillion budget, MSNBC is bringing you, oh my gosh, really big news, all right? A 3-minute segment on Joe Biden absolutely going to town on an ice cream cone. This is incredible stuff, you guys. I cannot believe they have hit this epic level of journalism here. And here is just a little bit of what they had to cover for 3 minutes. Again, let me just tell you, here's a little bit of Joe Biden eating an ice cream cone.
Mr. President, what did you order?
Chocolate chip.
Oh, yeah. Mr. President, what is your message?
I'm sorry, can we just... I want to play that again. Yes, I want to play that one more time. And I want you to really, really listen to when they, first of all, they ask him the question, which is like, oh, I don't know, maybe we could be asking about what's going on at the border or about the inflation, the new inflation numbers, or about the $1 trillion budget. But instead, they're asking him questions like, what did you order? And then like the gasping of the people who hear his flavor and think that it is the most amazing thing they've ever heard. Can we hear that one more time?
Mr. President, what did you order?
Chocolate chip.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I actually, my theory here is that they were just really amazed that Joe Biden completed a sentence.
No. Actually, he got there anyway.
Chocolate chip,
which is different.
And they were like, "Whoa! He said the whole thing without stumbling. That's amazing. This is incredible." And I mean, again, I'm not going to show the full 3-minute segment, but like they were just, "Oh, this is the most Joe Biden thing I've ever seen. He gets an ice cream cone. He absolutely goes to town on the ice cream cone. He really, really loves ice cream. He talks about it literally all the time." This is a quote from the segment. Get that man a cone. I mean, this is...
I did a video 8 months ago saying this is what's going to happen if Trump loses. And one of my predictions was literally that we were going to see room service journalism where questions are like, what's your favorite flavor of soft serve? And so I saw that clip this morning and part of me was like, yes, vindicated. The other part of me was like, it's real. This is like actually happening.
Womp womp.
Journalists, they are the most pretentious and arrogant people probably that have ever existed ever. They think that they're breaking Watergate literally every time they ask a question like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? What did you get? And they're, oh.
It's embarrassing. I'm like, I hate them and I'm even embarrassed for them. Like, I'm legitimately embarrassed for them when I watch it. And that's not to say I even remotely like care about them at all.
Yeah, I mean, what they're trying to do, and for those that I guess aren't paying attention, it's that they want to humanize this idiot, and I don't think he may be half robot by this time, but they want to humanize him, and I'll never accept that because I accept that a lot of freaking presidents are criminals as far as I'm concerned. But if there was any sort of mild consistency, which I'm done griping about the left and their inconsistency, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. It's that you know how they were approaching the last president. They threw him every fastball 100 miles an hour that they could get. And okay, I guess that's okay. You know, journalism, awesome. I mean, you reported probably in a half-tailed way, maybe drop some lies in there, but at least you're asking him something that maybe he should be answering considering that he's in that position. Well, not as much as with Biden. They're more so appreciating the fact that this guy is one of their guys and he's in that position of power. And I agree with you 100% about how arrogant these journalists are. I don't even see how being a like career worth striving for going into the future, seriously, because I do think that there is value and obviously people that do legitimate forms of journalism, but we're so far removed from that I see a journalist and I'm like, I think badly of them at this point. Like, how can I think highly? I think very lowly of these guys, but I can't respect them just considering definitely over the last 4, maybe 5 years. Maybe you can go back further than that, but certainly the last 4 and 5 years, they just exposed themselves so much that it's not about asking what the nitty gritty questions, getting down to the nitty gritty. It's more of, okay, is it their guy and who they can demonize, right. And they're like incapable of detaching their personal political preferences or biases from their job. And unfortunately, that in itself has been really the problem with a lot of things from entertainment as well. Like they can't remove that. So being unbiased is just not, they can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, if we could just like contrast this from whenever President Trump was hosting the, the football champions, it was Clemson, and he brought McDonald's and they like skewered him because how dare he bring McDonald's? That's fast food, it's unhealthy and all of this, and now we're gonna fawn all over Joe Biden eating chocolate chip ice cream.
Same thing.
Right.
They used to ask him, hey, is it true that you paid people to urinate on you, like based off like and like those were the questions that he had to deal with. That was my favorite thing about him, I think, is that he just had that smirk. And the journalist cannot contend with the smirk because it is a reflection of how no one actually takes you seriously except for yourself and your constituents. And it was so good because they want to be like, oh, I've got my pencil, my pen, I'm getting the story, I'm getting the scoop. But they're activists, they're not journalists. The only journalist I can think of off the top of my head who'd be like particularly groundbreaking in the last 5 years would be like James O'Keefe. But that's illegitimate, even though like everything he said that they've tried to challenge, it's been proven to be completely true. But they don't break stories like that anymore. They are activists and they masquerade that under the guise of objective reporting to serve their own self-image.
Yeah. All right, before we go to break, I just want to throw this over to the table here. An elementary school PE teacher in Virginia was placed on leave after a speech in which he told the school board he would not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa. This was during a school board meeting. His name is Tanner Cross. Let's listen to a little bit of that.
My name is Tanner Cross, and I'm speaking out of love for those who suffer with gender dysphoria. 60 Minutes this past Sunday interviewed over 30 young people who transitioned, but they felt led astray because lack of pushback or how easy it was to make physical changes to their bodies in just 3 months. They are now detransitioning. It's not my intention to hurt anyone, but there are certain truths that we must face when ready. We condemn school policies like 80-40 and 80-35 because it will damage children, defile the holy image of God. I love all of my students, but I will never lie to them regardless of the consequences. I'm a teacher, but I serve God first, and I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion, it's lying to a child, it's abuse to a child, and it's sinning against our God.
And almost immediately after that school board meeting, there was an email that went out to, it was sent to all of the parents. It said, I'm contacting you to let you know that one of our physical education teachers, Tanner Cross, is on leave beginning this morning. In his absence, his duties will be covered by substitute staff already working in our building. And because this involves a personnel matter, I can offer no further information. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that he said that and now he's been placed on leave. It's totally fine. I mean, why would you want a PE teacher to like know things like biological sex differences. Yeah,
pretty important thing. Definitely, seriously, considering what it is that he's doing. Look, man, you gotta get your kids out of these schools. I mean, I don't know what else to say. We've said it many times here. You got to get them out of there. More and more we learn that they are pushing a lot of this garbage onto your kids. In any event that there's anybody that is there and does not have that particular view, they are going to be ostracized, which says more, of course, about them. Get them out of there, and of course, lead the charge with decentralization. And again, I know you feel the brunt of this, you being a parent, being stolen from while your kid is not even attending this sort of this school.
Yeah, I put my money where my mouth was, for sure. Exactly.
But either way, that we recognize that is wrong. But just considering all of what they're teaching, you want to know why these youngsters keep getting pumped out in the way that they think. When you go look at the Portlands of the world and you see all these mugshots and the people that are being arrested are people that work with the local school district, that's where they're getting that garbage from. You got to get them out.
That's why Joe Biden wants them to come in at an earlier age, too.
Yep.
It's the iron law of propaganda. The earlier you can get them, the less it has to make sense. And they're now even with gym teachers. I'm young enough to remember, at least back when we didn't have to do this, like you would have, PE class and boys versus girls, and it was so fun. But now they're not going to have that anymore. They'll have like blue shirts versus red shirts or something. You won't be able to kind of have that like playful battle of the sexes in like some stupid little courtyard game.
Well, I reject your brag that you're young. Okay, that's all I want to say. All right, we've got more to come. But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Freedom Project Academy. All right, so I cannot even stress to you enough, all of the things that we were just talking about, this applies when we're talking about Freedom Project Academy. Your kids are being taught garbage in public school. Your kids are being taught that boys can be girls and girls can be boys and white people are racist. And by the way, math is also racist. But let's learn about the important things like Black Lives Matter and social justice. All right, this is what they are teaching these kids, and it only is going to get worse. That is why you need to go to freedomforschool.com. All right, Freedom Project Academy has perfected online learning. They've been doing it for over a decade, so they were doing it way before COVID. They are built on Judeo-Christian values. They have a classical curriculum, and they are dedicated to providing mastery of subject matter, not leftist propaganda. They are not going to indoctrinate your children. They want to teach them how to think, not what to think. You got to go to freedomforschool.com. Request your free information packet today. You know what? The fall semester is going to be around before we know it. Make sure that your child is prepared. Do not let them get indoctrinated another year. Go to freedomforschool.com. That is freedomforschool.com. Rand Paul, he got to the Senate floor this morning to do, of course, his annual. It's annual, right?
Yeah.
Around is always Memorial Day weekend.
No, he does it sometimes in like the Christmas to like the Festivus.
Okay, that's what I thought at first was that he did it Festivus, but he did it just this morning. His wasteful research. So here's a little bit of that. Just we're talking about the $6 trillion budget. We're talking about how your money is spent in government. It's really good for you to learn what your hard-earned taxpayer dollars are going towards. So here's just a little bit of that from Rand Paul. He says, "Ever wonder why a lizard waddles when he walks? Well, for $1.5 million taxpayer dollars, NSF had lizards walk on a treadmill while taking x-rays of their joints. What did they discover? That they need more taxpayer money before they could conclude any answer." Wow, that is shocking that they needed more money to get you but to be continued. To be continued. Here's another one. NIH spent over $800,000 to study whether Japanese quails are more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. I think we could have simply polled the audience, and of course, they found that they are. So, cocaine and risky sex habits of quail, definitely what you would choose for your taxpayer dollars to be spent on if you had a choice, I'm sure. Nearly $500,000 to determine if country frogs have a different mating call than city frogs. Why we need to know that, not quite sure. And the NSF spent $500,000 on a grant for UC Irvine to research if taking selfies improves happiness and relaxation. The study unsurprisingly found that taking selfies with something that makes you happy can improve your mood. And we needed $500,000 of your hard-earned money to be able to tell that. So congratulations, you guys.
When I mentioned that whole lizard thing, I think it was on the show maybe like it may have been like a half a year ago. And I remember people reaching out to me laughing because they thought that I was joking.
Yeah,
like they thought that it was just something that was crazy. I was saying, yeah, they spend X amount of money walking, having freaking lizards walk on treadmill. And they thought I was joking. I was like, no, that was real. Like, that's a real thing. It's a lot of stupid stuff that the government spends your money on, and most people don't know. They have absolutely no idea. But if you wonder why, definitely with those guys, be it the scientists, academics, why they are so much protective of the state, it's because their funding doesn't exist unless that's where they're getting it. Because how many people are voluntarily, maybe there are, I don't know, maybe you're into that, trying to figure out what kind of animals, what they do on coke.
Risky sex habits.
Maybe
Quail.
that's your thing. And if that ain't, I can't, I'm going to judge you. That's kind of bizarre there. But voluntarily, a lot of people aren't going to be giving their money for these sorts of projects, but these people know. So you wonder why, like, you got these weird, like, diversity departments, definitely in academia, weird degrees, and all these sorts of stuff that are worthless. Well, it's because in some way, shape, or form, they are being subsidized by way of the state. It has to be eliminated. This is something that they're addicted to it. Spending, obviously. I mean, it's not like they're reeling it back or anything, but they're addicted to it, and everybody wants a piece of the pie because it's a big pool of giant money that they can all get access to that they don't have to earn. Because again, imagine a business plan as such. Hey, I want to figure out some things about lizards. We're going to put them on a freaking treadmill and x-ray them. Like, okay, what's in it for me?
Right.
Nothing. Okay, cool. Not in.
Yeah.
Not in. And as people will take their money elsewhere to spend it, I don't know, on food, maybe not lizards walking on treadmills, but that's where we're at. It has to be eliminated.
You know,
it has to be eliminated.
It's interesting, John, because first of all, early in the program, we talked about how Republicans are not helpful in curbing the spending either. But our friend of the program, Chad Prather, who's running for governor of Texas, we were talking to, he wants to abolish property taxes in Texas. And I had someone who was asking, well, what would you replace it with? How would you replace? And we're like,
you replace a cancer?
Well, let's see. If you want to continue paying for crap like this, I guess let's come up with a replacement. But otherwise, maybe, just maybe, we could just cut all of the spending that we're doing, because I can guarantee you there's so much waste in there that we don't need it. And you have even Republicans who are like, well, we need to replace it with something. Like, no, how about we get rid of all this bloat and waste?
I have to take the opportunity to dunk on the second worst group of people in the world, scientists. It's the same type of mentality that the journalists have, where they want to be important. They fantasize about not Watergate, but circumnavigating the globe, finding out what the star patterns, but instead they're like, lizard, treadmill, $800,000. And that's what's so bad about income tax too. It's like, you get your paycheck every 2 weeks and you see that number that's deducted or withheld, and you kind of view your money as not your money, but almost like a ration. And so we see this report come out and we're like, dude, what the hell? But we're not going to do anything about it, because we almost feel psychologically it's not our money to even have in the first place. Like they decide arbitrarily what amount of our money we get to keep, and then they just go blow the rest of it for their friends and their weird experiments.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
I'm known for it.
Well, every once in a while, all right. But so we've talked about this before. I don't know if you've been on the program, but I am a huge advocate for, well, first of all, taxation is theft. I agree with you there.
100%.
But I think a good bridge to, like, hey, let's try to take the first step towards eliminating all of the ridiculous taxes that we have would be making people pay quarterly taxes instead of deducting it from their paycheck. Just like give them their flat, like 1099s, they get just a flat payment, right? And they have to pay the government a check every quarter, and that check really freaking hurts.
Yeah, people get excited about their tax returns.
Yeah,
like they get like, oh, I got $400 back, but how much did you lose?
Yeah, they gave you your money back with no interest.
Yeah,
great
that's
job,
exactly
guys.
You didn't get that. They don't understand that, because you bring up a great point, is that they just assume that it's supposed to be theirs. Yeah. So instead of because that's been my solution to the issue. We look at the issue.
Quarterly tax payment, man.
Yeah, well, exactly. My solution to the issue is looking at it from okay, these people are having money taken from them, stolen from them, and if they could actually see what that stuff is more so going to, they would be more inclined to see that there's an actual problem. But definitely when you take it off the top almost immediately, and then these people, it doesn't take long, they get conditioned. Believe it or not, definitely income tax and all of that stuff, that's something that's happened in the last 100 maybe or so years. Believe it or not, we had roads. We had roads before we had the damn taxes, and all of this stuff existed, but now effectively all it is money laundering. Yeah. It's money laundering. It's people that are being able to, that exist within the state, lacing up their friends, scientists, academics, that are all getting money that obviously isn't theirs to research crap that nobody cares about. It's amazing.
How do you feel about the roads, though, Eric?
I hate them, and I would say something else, but I don't. I want to allow our producers to be able to do their job.
Yeah, I already messed them up, so thank you. I'm sure they appreciate that. All right, we've got more to come, but we have got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Easy.
A viral video of a Georgia mother's defiant rebuke of the Gwinnett County Board of Education's mask mandates was taken down by our benevolent overlords at YouTube, who we hold very dear and very much appreciate the opportunity to bring this message to our viewers. They said that it spread medical misinformation. She was just talking about the mask mandates that require her 6-year-old daughter and other children to wear masks, and they're like, no, you can't talk about that. And by the way, she did make the point that COVID doesn't affect children, and they were like, well, actually, have you guys seen that?
Yes,
the
meme.
Actually, that was, I don't want to, our benevolent overlords.
Well, I'm back-to-back
Don't mean
champ,
to
so maybe hopefully me being on
Yeah, there you go.
strike removal champ. So
yeah, we'll be like, well, Eric July is on the episode,
yeah,
so you
can't take it
you're gonna
off.
have to deal with
that
him.
is an amazing story that even as I'm not going to say the science is changing, it's more of their analysis of it. They are switching opinions kind of on
But remember, their data's changing because they came out with that study that was like, oh, by the way, we largely overestimated
bingo
child hospitalization.
Exactly. Oh, largely. I mean, it was almost non-existent. I mean, you got it like disastrously wrong. So for people to, and that's what kills me about YouTube. Didn't we speak about this yesterday? It's like there was once upon a time. Now it's them two, but they two. But it was once upon a time where all of that dialogue was not only allowed to exist, it was cool because you go down a rabbit hole like 9/11 videos and all kinds of stuff. And it was awesome. It was awesome just to see just a crazy reaching that people would do among controversial topics between that, JFK, and all kinds of things. And this past year, when it came to masks and vaccines, all of a sudden it's like, well, nope, you can only say what is approved by the overlords over at the WHO, and even then they'll try to strike you if you don't have a following, they'll still strike you for that anyway. You got to be like me and go in there flipping some tables.
Yeah, you can literally quote the CDC and they'll still
get you like what I did. Like WHO, they still gave me a strike, and I had to, hey dude, it's on the bulletin, you idiot. Like what I read from the statistics, it's right there from Johnny and Edith. It's on the WHO bulletin. Oh yeah, we got it wrong. Our apologies. We'll go ahead and flag your account so it won't happen again, and it happened again. But that's just, it's weird. It does show that, like I said, it's more about who I think from a political standpoint, who they can demonize more than anything. Unfortunately, this did get separated by way of politics, these sort of issues on the mask, issues on the vaccine. They just don't like people being able to speak up. That they would like to demonize. And it sucks because YouTube used to not be about that.
That's such a good point because they allow almost for this like sort of controlled opposition of like conspiracy theories to exist on these platforms. Yeah. So people go and be like, oh, I'm going to learn about the Illuminati. Yeah. They don't want me to know about that, but here I am. And then you get coffee with these people. They've got their laptop. They have their like question everything sticker and all of that. Just don't trust authority. And then you're like, What do you think about the official government narrative surrounding COVID? And well, I think they've got their mask on. Just like, what do you think about?
Gotta take it
What do you think about the official narrative of like George Floyd's death or something like that? And then they're just always, it was all, and they just parrot exactly what the media overlords tell them because they are controversial because they think that maybe the moon landing was faked or something, and like Bill Gates is really just no, or like the CIA when those alien videos are like the CIA is really just stumped by some guy who found a grainy video. Like, how did he get that video? He's finding out so much that he's not supposed to know. I'm so threatened right now.
It's crazy when you think about, at least with the masks and kids.
Yeah.
Because you talk about the, we just discussed they think they said 40% overinflated numbers of child hospitalizations, which already, as Eric pointed out, were minuscule. Then they started talking about, well, there might be this inflammatory condition in children with COVID-19 that they called it long COVID. Well, now they came out and said long COVID in children is actually rarer than previously thought, with less than 2% of children experiencing any symptoms 2 months after infection. By the way, The low risk for children nearly vanishes now that the cases have plummeted. I mean, it says like on average, fewer than 0.01% of Americans are currently infected. And the chance of that's Americans, and the chance of an asymptomatic person transmitting to a close contact is about 0.7%. That yields hold on, I got to maximize this so I can count the number of zeros. 0.00007% chance that any close contact will transmit infection to a child.
It's just amazing.
So, but it's just the 4 zeros after the decimal.
Like that, because again, there was numbers that were coming out of even the other countries that got hit earlier that suggested some of this. And they would just completely remove you from certain platforms and just analyzing the data for yourself. Now, I think it's a little more in some context to talk about it a little bit, certainly like with the Origins Facebook overlord said, okay, I guess because Biden's talking about it now, you can now talk about it, and you don't expect to get your ban lifted or anything. They just won't punish you as much as before. But these public experts come out and act like they were just ahead of the curve and all of this, and then it's like nobody gets vindicated in terms of like there's no apology, nobody's going to see any consequences that they ruined all of these people's lives, especially these children's lives, having them not be able to either go to school or covering their face while they were there, though there was no evidence that ever even showed that they were a threat to pass it in the way that adults did. And now they get to come out and say, okay, yeah, we got everything wrong. So what?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Incredible. And again, she said young children are not affected by this virus, but she was wrong because it's 0.00007% likely that it could transmit to children.
So it's mostly false about it.
Yeah, mostly false. All right, really quick before we go, I do want to show this to the viewers. There were 2 men who were escorted out of Yankee Stadium on Thursday, one of them in handcuffs, after they hung a large pro-Trump banner from the second deck. They those of you who are watching, they hung a big banner that said, Trump won, save America, and they were escorted from the stadium. Come on. Is no one allowed to have any fun these days? It's funny.
I thought this was America.
Thank you. I thought this was freaking America. It's funny. No one in New York can take a joke, although we already knew that. All right, sorry, those of you who are stuck in New York. I'm sorry. But give me a freaking break. So apparently they said one of someone who covers the team said it sounds like the entire crowd was booing until security confiscated the banner, which then resulted in a large cheer. But again, it was New York, so can't expect anything different in New York.
Well, they weren't arrested. Were they just escorted?
It says one of them was in handcuffs when they were escorted out.
So it's more escorted. Hopefully, I was like, well, I want to know what the crime was.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, like, okay, but like trying to get them out of there. But hopefully they weren't like sent to jail.
Well, they may have incited an insurrection, Eric.
Oh, that's true. That's true. He's probably on federal custody right now that I'm thinking about it.
Then all of a sudden they'd be huge baseball fans. They'd be like, baseball's America's
pastime. Exactly.
They're attacking our democracy.
We gotta take a break. Back in a minute. Gosh, we're gonna see that.
That's exactly what it is. All these super fans of baseball.
Hey, don't forget, those of you who are watching, wherever you are watching us from, we love that you're watching us, but you got to go over to wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, rate, and review the news and why it matters. It will help more people be able to find this program so they can stop listening to the trash garbage that is cable TV news. Also, if you write us a review and we like it, you may see it read live on air, like the one today from, who is this from? eRoach414, who says, I just really like this show. It's captivating and over way too quickly. I love all the commentary and guests, but my husband gets excited when Eric July is on. Whoa! Because based on his shirts, they have the same taste in movies and bands. Hardcore superhero nerds unite.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, we're hardcore at Pistolville.
I just don't know. I would really love to see what Eric's closet looks like.
Yeah, it's band stuff and metal and comics. That's it.
Just a ton of hats, though, probably.
Yeah, a million hats.
A ton.
Literally, probably a million hats.
Oh, my God.
Probably.
Your poor soon-to-be wife.
Yes. Oh, man. She gets them for me, so,
okay.
it works
Well,
out.
then she's fine. All right, thanks, guys, for being here.